EVO. Okay. Hello, Devil Within listeners. I have a special treat for you today. I never have interview guests, but this is going to be the first in a string of interview guests in support of the re-release of season 1 of The Devil Within, in honor of the docu-series on MGM Plus called Let the Devil In. And it makes sense that the first person I have is the person primarily in charge for delivering the show. She's our showrunner and director. Her name is Danielle Franco, and it's great to see your smiling face, Danielle. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Excited for the release because we're recording this on the 27th, which is about 4 days before the show drops. So, are you excited?
I'm so excited. I'm very excited. It's
Great.
been a while since I've seen it, so it's one of those, you see it 1,000 times and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you stop for a little bit and then it comes out and you're like, get to watch it all over again.
It is. Experience it again. Are you having any kind of viewing party or anything like that on the night?
No, that would give me way too much anxiety. I'm going to just see, hopefully people will watch it on their own and let me know what they think, but I can't sit in a room and watch people watch something I've worked on. So
I know I don't want to, but we're having like the neighborhood come over, our group come over. Anyway, I'm nervous about it as well. But like I said, so and it wasn't it's not hyperbole. I really feel you more than anyone else, once production started, are responsible for delivering the show. Now, I wasn't there for any of the pre-production, so I'd love to hear about that when we get to it. But we'll get to what a showrunner actually does. And but where I want to start is just, how did you come to the project? What is your background that made this something that you wanted to go after? And is it something that you pursued? Was it something that was offered? Like, just tell me the whole catalyst that brought you to Let the Devil In.
Great. Yeah. So I've been a showrunner and director and creative producer for almost 20 years, or over 20 years, I think. And I've worked with lots of companies, but Left Right is one of my favorite companies that I've ever worked with as a production company. And Annika Jones, who works there, is like one of my favorite producers to work with there. So they actually came to me with this project saying, that you were on it, the podcast, and that we were making it into a series. And I have a lot of true crime background. I've done a lot of different kinds of documentary genres, but true crime most recently. And, I think that I've been doing a lot of prestige true crime. So true crime that is always about the crime as sort of the base layer, but then finding a way that goes a little bit deeper, finds what else are we looking at when we're looking at this crime, and how to approach this story and find some interesting things that are going on in there that we can explore. And so I found, it's an incredible story. It's so, the crime itself is so horrific and so upsetting. And the facts of the case are so, just confusing and mysterious. And then on top of that, you have this like 80s nostalgia and what was going on in the time with satanic panic and how people reacted. And it's just so interesting to look at like what was the context in which people who were there reacted and responded to and processed this terrible tragedy. And so it just felt like there was a lot to dive into.
Was there any kind of pause or hesitation with the supernatural stuff that I inserted into the podcast? And because and when I say inserted, it was, for me, the story had been living in my head for so long, and there was so much of that childhood kind of fascination with it, where that really gave the paranormal stuff a lot of legs, right, to last over the decades, that I really just felt like I needed to scratch that itch when I was writing the podcast. Given the prestige true crime that you had done, were you like, well, are we going to have to put that shit in there too? Or like talk about that a little.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Because yes, I think on one hand, I was like, listened to the podcast and I thought like, okay, so what if this stuff is actually true, right? I look at things through a journalistic lens, right? And so I'm looking and I'm like, okay, that's an interesting story, but is there any fact to that? Is there anything that we can base that on? Um, and so there was a little of like, okay, well, it seems like there's a lot here, but I think a lot of that is probably not real. It's probably rumors. So what is real?
Mm.
Um, and so I thought that there was an interesting challenge there, but also I'm a huge horror fan. I love horror movies. And I know that something that was always discussed at the beginning is how do you make a true crime series also feel like a horror movie? And and I thought that that was a challenge that was really interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't know what really happened that night.
Right.
The people who know
Right.
are not around anymore, and so it's really about the stories we tell around it. And so there is this element of horror movie there. It's the belief system we all bring into reacting and processing a crime. Um, and so I just really I thought like, okay, cool. We did the part, or you did the part about the lore, which was really
Mhm.
strong, and we certainly delve into that. But let's re-examine this in a way where it's coming from a journalistic lens. What do we know as truth and what do we know as rumor?
And that's when I knew that that I was in good hands, that the story was in good hands. The first time I got a call from Aniki, I think it was from Aniki, who
Okay,
I'd
yeah,
also love to talk to,
amazing producer.
asking me a question about something and saying, "Well, we need a couple more sources to confirm that."
Yeah.
And with the work that I do, that has never once been a condition on me inserting something into an episode. All right, is multiple sources. So I knew I was dealing with professionals, and who were going to take this very, very seriously, which I loved, which I loved. So, what was the first thing that you did when like you get hired, and then what? Do you
You just
build
start
out your
calling.
crew first? Do you look for other
Mm.
collaborators? Do you start hiring people? Do you dive right into the creative? Like how did that work?
You do it all. You do it all. So it's very busy at the beginning. Yes, of course, you look for your crew. I mean, there's certain I've been in this business a while, so there's certain people you call right away, and as long as they're
Mhm.
free, you go for it. There's people who've worked at left, right for a long time, so there's a lot of that was already built in. Um, and I think the most important thing we did was we just started calling the people. And a lot of people were really, really, really hesitant to be part of this.
Mhm.
For the reason you just said, they were like, look, we listened to the podcast. There was a lot of liberties taken. That's not really where we want to go with this. And it took many, many phone calls to have these conversations and say, look, we're not going to do that. This is different. That was its thing, and this is different. We really want to tell a story that is truthful, and we also want to honor your perspective.
Mhm.
So, to me, what was really important is having sort of a variety of perspectives. So, we interviewed childhood friends who were children at the time. So their perspective is so interesting, right? Like how did they process a peer who did something awful and then has written documents saying that he did it for the devil? And then and then parents of the neighborhood, how do they process it? And the principal, or, Sister Philomena, who lovingly took care of these children. And then this happened in her school. And she's coming from a Catholic point of view. Satan is real.
Mhm.
In Catholicism, Satan is real. So of course Satan came in and took over this child. And actually one of my favorite interviews that we did was with the first police officer who showed up on the scene. This was a 20-year-old boy at the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
20 years old, walks in and sees a brutal murder. And this is also the '80s where he afterwards was told like, "Okay, cool. Good job. See you later. Come back tomorrow. Back on the job." No no trauma
No,
therapy, nothing.
nothing. Nothing.
Nothing. And he just went on with his life. And here we are 40 years later, and this was the first time he ever really talked about what he saw that day. And it's so visceral when he's talking about it. I mean, you can tell he has not dealt with what he went through. And to me, that's what's so interesting about this story is these awful things happen and we want to understand why, but also like, how does that affect the people around it? You hear, yeah. So that was so answering your question, finding who were the right people to tell the story, building their trust, letting them get to know that we were what our intentions were with this story. Um, and then, you know, we have 4 episodes. We knew we had 4 episodes. We need to fill that time. And you have to be very organized at the beginning. What is the story we want to tell? What is the beginning, middle, and end? How do we want to, who are the voices we want to cover this? And you figure it out in advance and you move it around as you go. Like everything is fluid and you have interviews and you think, oh my gosh, that's a really interesting story I didn't think about. And you go on a tangent. But if you kind of go without any sort of idea of where you're going, you get lost in the weeds. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about the different points of view, and every episode is structured around different points of view. Yeah.
So let me ask you something, because this is all new to me. Like, if you remember me on set, I was just the guy in the corner with a big smile on my face the whole time.
That was great.
And I was learning, trying to learn and soak it all in. So is it established kind of production, like protocol with this, a project like this, a project that includes about equal amounts of interview guests and then dramatic recreations, okay, that you do the interviews first? Because that was with the first half of production was doing all the interviews, and then the second half was when we shot all of the scenes, this more scripted stuff. And I would imagine it would be because you're not quite sure what you're going to get from the interview subjects, and that will inform the creative later. Is that am I right about that?
Absolutely right. And we're working on a timeline. Like, we have to deliver this by a certain time, and you just really have to strategize what's the best way to do this so that everything that we film is going to be used. And, so yes, that is pretty standard for this kind of format. Get the interviews, figure out what your story is, keep working on that outline. So you hear something new, oh, great, this is a new scene, and think about like, what are the things that I can cover with archival, which we did not have much of in this story, but we had some. And what are the things that we can turn into the horror movie part of it?
Right.
Into that. And I know you're going to talk to him, but Trey Nelson, who really was the director of the recreation and working with the actors, he and I worked very, very closely on like, how are we going to show these things in a way that also honors 80s horror and the sort of campiness and moodiness of that. So it was really fun. I mean, there's another thing that was also important, always conversation about like, okay, this is fun, but these are real people. This is not a horror movie. These are real people. And they're real people who left other real people alive to still be traumatized by this. And we want to not go so hard as to just pretend that wasn't, important to them.
Yeah, I missed the mark on that part in the podcast, right? Like I never purposely went out there and was like, oh, I'm going to disrespect or whatever. I was just, listen, I didn't know anybody was ever going to listen to it. Other maybe some of my asshole friends back in Jersey. That's it. That's really all I thought, And then things just started happening so quickly, and because I was left completely unsupervised. I wasn't even a podcast listener. I didn't know that there were strict kind of rules in true crime podcasting that I really didn't follow at all. And so, a lot of people felt tricked after the first couple of episodes. They're like, oh, this because it starts off as a fairly straightforward true crime podcast,
Mm-hmm.
And then it really seriously veers off. And so, but the true crime listeners that I lost because of that, I gained a bunch of horror genre listeners, right? So it was kind of like a mashup of genres and of audience, which wound up working like really well for it. But so in the episodes that I've seen, right, like it going through the edits and everything, you guys really didn't shy away from the was he possessed thing. Like, but you were hearing it from the mouths of people who have strongly held beliefs that that type of paranormal activity kind of exists. So it doesn't come off campy. It doesn't come off as reductive by any means. It's especially listening to Sister Philomena. Like she's hung her life on this belief structure that this is what happened, and
who's to say she's wrong? I don't know. I don't know any more than she does. I think that's kind of my North Star when doing this is like, I'm never going to put something in a documentary that's like, there was rumors, there was blood up on the ceiling, so he must have levitated. That we have no corroboration for that. So I'm not going to put that in the documentary. But Sister Philomena's point of view, feeling that she was in the room with the devil that day, that is as much a reality as anything else. That was her reality. And that's what's so exciting about documentaries. I love documentaries about people, and this is a documentary about people. It's not just about this crime, it's about people. And it's about, that is how she processed this. And I don't know what happened that day. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened that night. So all we can do is hear people's point of views and the belief system that they bring into the story, and just try to understand why they believe that. And the cops, the police come in, and their point of view is very, very structured. And they even admit there's things about this case I'll never be able to explain.
Yeah.
They just, that kind of, to them, it's like, okay, that's fine. Who cares? To other people, it's like, oh, if you can't explain things, let me tell you how to explain it. I know this from religion. I know this, I believe in a higher being. Just honoring everybody and their personal point of view is not lying. That is, and is not making anything up. That is just understanding how people process the world.
So what was the most frustrating thing for you leading up to shooting? Was it, because I know for me, I was super worried that we weren't going to get enough interview subjects to say yes to justify even making the show. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because there was a couple of weeks early on there where Annika would call me and be like, I don't know, Branden, a lot of people are saying no. I don't know what we're going to do here. And I was really nervous about it. And then the other thing was the lack of the police file that we couldn't get. That I was hopeful right up until the end that we were going to be able to get either crime scene photos or the full file, and we never did. What was it for you?
I mean, I think both of those things. I think we really, 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 most people, majority of the people in the documentary said no at first. And it was, and it's respectful. We never force anybody. Obviously, you can't force somebody to talk, but it was a respectful conversation. And it's sort of one of those things where you're able to get a few people on board with your vision, and suddenly doors do start opening. And that is what happened. There are plenty of people who talk to me off camera who have very interesting parts of this story as well, but did not want to share it. And that is fine. And it's frustrating. I have one person in particular who had such interesting things to say about him and who he was, that we will not be able to share because he's not willing to speak about it, but that's okay. That was his choice. So that was very
he told you, hold on, I'm sorry. We got to pause for a second. So he told you have it in your brain, but he said off the record. So,
it's
you're a better person than I am. Okay.
Well, and that's the difference between documentary, or at least this kind of documentary, and podcast. Like, I'm not on there being like, oh, guess what I heard? Like with podcasts, you can just talk about what you heard and you just don't say who said it. But here it's like, I have nobody to say it. I'll tell you another frustrating thing that you didn't mention.
Yeah.
Believe me, we asked everybody about Betty Ann. Nobody had anything to share about Betty Ann. It was as if she was a complete mystery. And that, I would say, if there's one thing looking back that I think has been a bummer for me, is like, she's a victim here. And I never want a victim to just be a victim and not a full human being, but we didn't have anybody speak about her. So I don't really know who she was. We had a few people talk about it, and we certainly put it. We had a few people make assumptions about her that we didn't put in because it was not, I have no idea if it's truthful, and she's not here to defend herself. So, but that was one thing where it does make me sad that here's a mother, here's a mother who we weren't able to represent in this final series. So who knows? She's still a mystery.
I wonder why that is. Was it because of how her lifestyle? I don't want to speculate, but I mean, it's like she almost didn't exist in a way, and that's kind of sad. I know she went to church every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know she was.
That requires.
Mm-hmm. She was very
every movie I've seen. Wait, every movie I've seen, when the person goes to church every day, they've got some shit going on in their lives, Yeah. So I know that's just movie world, but it makes you think when someone goes to church every day. But so let's move into the like the casting process for the people that were going to be playing these characters that I've known my whole life, because that was a trip. Showing up that first day on set in Maplewood in Jersey, and I'm like, oh, whoa, my God, you're playing this person, you're playing this person, so that was great. I had a really, really nice moment in the dressing rooms back there, where like one by one the actors were coming up to me and saying, okay, so you actually knew this person, give me all the actory stuff, like tell me about them, and what were their most movement, and what did they talk like, and what was this, what was that, and like one by one, from the woman playing Sister Philomena to the kid playing Tommy to the guy playing God Sherlocker, like all that. I mean, it was a great moment for me. But so tell me about casting and how involved you were in that.
I was involved. I would definitely say Trey led that. I think, and I mean, the cast was, the person who played Tommy, Christopher, was so amazing. I just really, owe so much to him, because he really gave this child a lot of life and a lot of really being able to see this person as a duality in this person. Anyway, for people who will see it.
So he gave a very nuanced, very layered performance, and he was significantly older than Tommy was at the time, but he has such a youthful face and a youthful appearance that really, it was a wonderful casting choice, because his age gave him some life experience to be able to kind of show the complexities of the emotions that Tommy was going through. Where if we cast the same age kid who didn't have the problems that Tommy obviously had, I don't think it would have come through. So I agree. Christopher did a great job. Yeah,
I mean, you kind of, again, I really think Trey did such a good job of making sure that they had the acting chops and all that. Obviously it was easy for me to be like, that doesn't remotely look like that person. And, but yeah, I would talk to him about the casting.
Gotcha.
For me, the biggest thing that I was able to do during that time was, here I was holding all the information of all the interviews, the structure of 4 episodes, knowing that we needed to cover 4 episodes, which is, not 4 hours, but close 3.5 hours. And we had 5 days to shoot. So that is an incredibly difficult task. And so it's like, how do you get the most out of this footage? And the thing that I really approached it with was, again, we are hearing different points of view, right? We're hearing people who think that Tommy was possessed. We're hearing people who think that another human being actually did it, which is a story in this series. And you're hearing another that he had a mental breakdown. Well, how do we see the same scene 3 different times? And how do we, because then you're not changing the lighting, you're not changing the props, you're not changing all the backgrounds, you're just getting a different performance. And so we found those key scenes that we could play multiple times. And so you see, when you watch, you're like, oh, I'm back here again, but it looks different this time.
Yeah.
And that was the way to, I think, do two things at once: stretch the footage, but also have an interesting way of looking at a story from different points of view. It's kind of like the Rashomon or the like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, and that's how I did a lot of the writing of what we were covering with. And so that's how I approached it.
Did you, I mean, getting down just like the nuts and bolts of everything, from your position, did you okay like locations? Were you on location scouting? Or did you have like a say in like all of that?
Yeah, definitely. Not, I think, as you know, when you're working with a team of, there's a certain level of, you have to just trust people, and
Yep.
Trey was obviously incredibly talented and experienced, so I was not on his ass about everything, but like, yeah, I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I certainly looked at the locations with him, and talked with him and the DP about how they were approaching the shots and all that stuff. So,
Right.
but I wasn't across every single wardrobe choice or whatever. There's
Right.
certain
Right.
level
You
of
got to
trust that
let
yeah,
people do their jobs.
yeah.
So I want to talk about, which is something that I think is unique to the show, is the miniature set.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes. Love it.
So amazing, amazing, amazing. So tell me about that, and how it's used creatively in the show, and just your feelings about it.
So I think, the fact that this happened in the 80s is so significant to the story, and it's so significant to the documentary. I mean, it is a time and place that, this is a town that to this day people will be like, "Oh, Jefferson, isn't that where that kid killed his
Mm,
mother?" It doesn't leave. And the houses have all changed, and the people have all changed, and I hear that it's even the people who live there might be a different type of person than it was at the
mhm.
time. It just, this was a moment in time that we can't recreate, and so how do we show that? And that's how the idea of the miniatures came in. So we talked about the miniatures as if it was a snow globe. And it's just this, like, it's a snapshot of what was going on on this one street. So much of the story is just about this house, and I was in this house, and then he went to this house, and had, yeah, you could show a map, that's sort of boring, but instead we built this miniature set, or I shouldn't say we, Nix and Gerber Studios, who are
Mhm.
amazing, built this unbelievable miniature set. And we were to take these macro lenses and cameras and just go in and feel like we are living on that street. And it has this very eerie feel, because you're like, oh my, you sometimes forget that it's not real, right?
Oh,
Sometimes
no.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh, right, this is the miniatures. And so you have that sort of a little bit of the creepy, uncanny valley, but in a scene versus a person. And so you're sort of, it just adds to the moodiness of it. Um, but it was an idea that was so great, and we were so excited about it, and then when they built it, it was like, "Oh my god, this looks even better than I expected." And
Even
then when
better.
we shot it, we were like, "Oh my god," and we were able to use so much of that, because it just did so many things all at once, and I love it. I love that part.
I walked onto that stage in Brooklyn, and I couldn't. I was freaking blown away, because there was one house that we shot at, um, in the town, like right next door to my town. And so, the day we were shooting there, like it was 4 minutes from Tommy's house where we were shooting, and so we just drove down onto White Rock Boulevard, and drove up that street, and to see it, a street that I've driven on a million times in my life. Okay. But then to be there on the day that we were in mid production of the show it was really strange, and then to see the miniature set, and to see the woods, and you're right, because it's like was this house, and this house, and these woods, and this is where so much changed and so much happened,
Yeah.
and the echoes of that night are still heard throughout the whole community, um, so it was like it was kind of captured in time, in that snow globe effect.
Yeah, and I love how, like, there's a creepiness to the daytime of it too. Like, the nighttime of it is really fun because you're like, oh, it's so creepy. But like the day, they found his body during the day. And when you get into the daytime miniatures, it still has this like very creepy feel to it. And again, horror to me is all about mood, right? So you just have to
Sure.
set mood. And this just did so much to do that.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the horror thing for a minute, because Eli brought in a director kind of like from his school, this woman named Kat Hostick, who came in and she was there basically to punch up the horror elements okay. So how'd you feel about that and about her work?
Look, I think that sometimes challenges are the most where the most creativity comes from. I think that there was a challenge too. We had 3 people who were really trying to figure out how to cover this, right? So we had Trey, we had me, and we had Kat. And Trey is thinking big, like all the visuals and working with the crew. I'm thinking about how to cover this story and being true to the people who gave me permission to tell their story, and being true to what, I promised them. And then Kat came in and she's like, yeah, and we need some blood and guts. And which was her job. And so there was a lot of like, there was a lot of different people needing different things. And that was a big part of my job on set, is really trying to honor all of those things. And so, at the end of the day, Kat was able to say, she would constantly say like, okay, if you want horror out of this scene, you need, these are these little horror things that you need to see the knife come up with blood on it. Like all these things that she's a professional in. And I had to make a decision. Okay, that doesn't feel right here. And another place, okay, that does feel right here. And so it's like when, not to give away too much, but when we're in the episode where we're really imagining this story through the lens of the people who think the devil made him do it, like then you can go all, hog wild with violence. It's the devil who did it. It's not a little boy. So it's like, thank God we had all these like real horror-y scenes that really make you feel like, oh, that's so creepy and horror-y.
Really did. Yeah. I'm not a horror fan. I'm really not. Like, I don't like going to horror movies. I cover my eyes. My kids make fun of me all the time, but that's just, I don't know. I have a hard time separating. I think it's real. I'm like, that's actually happening to the person. It's crazy.
The first time I watched, that cut and the editor who did that, and I was like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah. And what was interesting, I think you and I were talking about this on set in that basement, right? Where I was just like, I had a moment where I'm like, because no one was there, right? Because the Betty Ann's dead and Tommy's dead, so we really don't know.
Yeah.
We have eyewitness accounts from the police officers who showed up, but we don't have crime scene photos. We don't have any of that. So we're kind of creating the record with this show. We're creating as close to an official record as there will ever be for this, based on real meticulous attention paid to the interviews with the police, excuse me, that you guys did, in terms of where the body positioning was, what the blood splatter was like, what the condition of the body, like all of that. And that was a pretty solemn responsibility, in my opinion, right? And you seemed to think that as well. You have Trey was more, like you said, big picture. Kat was like blood and knife and da 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 da, right? And so you were that kind of like steady presence, saying, hold on, all right, let's make sure that we're doing all of this right, and that we're being respectful, and that we're telling the story, and that and so I felt really that the story is very well taken care of there, and I'm proud of the record that we created with this.
Well, and I think that was part of why, to me, it was important that the scenes that are the record, the basement, the murder scene, it was important to me to show that we don't know. The fact that we show 3 different versions of it is important, because the truth is we don't know what happened that day. We have no idea. And so all we can do is imagine it through the people who are imagining what happened. And so it was, that was extremely important to me. So it had to be true to what I knew certain people said, if that makes sense.
It does. It totally does. So if there's a pie chart, right, what percentage of it did you look at it creatively as true crime, and what percentage of it as horror?
My honest opinion is like I just have a lot of trouble thinking through genre.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
really and who knows, maybe I should think more that way, but like to me, I am just such a story person. I am always thinking, what is the best way to tell this story? What is the entry point to the story? What is the reveals that happen? Like, oh my gosh, I'm 2 episodes in. We need to keep our audience on. Like, what's something new we can throw in there? And so to me, it doesn't matter what the genre is. It's like, is this story an interesting story to tell? And so that is always first and foremost. I think what makes true crime really exciting and so popular is that like it's an inherent story.
Yeah.
I worked in reality TV a long time ago, and you would have to make up drama all over the place, and I hated it because it wasn't real. But this is real. Like somebody often died or something happened. There's drama already part of the story. So there's that. So I think it's ultimately a true crime story, but like the
Yep.
horror is just the style. You just get to like have fun with
Yeah. Sure.
how you tell it.
Sure. I like that because I would say, gosh, it's 75, 80% like legitimate investigative true crime.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
With the depth of the interviews, the questions that were asked, the answers that we got, especially from, like we said, Sister Philomena, especially, man, Detective
Yeah.
Hart came on board, like
And
I know
he did.
Hart I know most of my life, and he said no to me for the podcast. Um, so when he said yes, I went, okay, this is going to be amazing because we're going to hear he's going to legitimize a lot of things. Um, and then tracking down like the childhood friends, and it's so for true crime listeners out there that are really looking for to really sink your teeth into a true crime story, it's that. And
Mhm.
there's just enough holy shit horror that will scare the crap out of you, right, to
Right.
satisfy the people looking for a horror story.
But I think that
um
there is a satisfying end to all of this. I really do think that we were able to have and it took some real work to figure out who can speak to something beyond the like rumors and beyond the assumptions of, folklore and all that stuff. Like who can really talk about how could these things be possible? Let's really analyze how could this be possible? And that was very important. It takes till the 4th episode to get there, but I think it's worth it.
I think it's also worth I totally think it's worth it. And you know it, you got to face the question when any time that you are talking about the Tommy Sullivan case. Talk about whatever you want. Eventually, all roads lead to how did he commit those
How
wounds
did you
to
do it?
himself? Like how did he do it? Like what's the answer there, right? And so I
Right.
like how that was treated in this. I won't give it away, but there's not like any big giveaway to it. But how it was approached, I thought was very thoughtful and really really interesting. And did you come away with I don't know. What do you think? Right? Like I know you're a religious person. I happen to not be. But what if you had to like gun to your head? What do you think happened?
I mean, I think he probably had some very severe mental illness. And I think he was living in a time where people didn't talk about that stuff. We talk about it too much now where nobody knows who actually has mental illness.
Yep, I
But
agree.
this was a time when people didn't talk about that, and there's just so many reasons why he didn't get the help that he needed, and that is the true tragedy, in my opinion. And all it did was continue to give people something outside to blame
Yeah.
instead of, oh my God, we have to talk about mental health.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
I don't know
that's
if
the
I
real
told you.
tragedy of the story.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if I told you this, but there was another really big streamer that was close to
Mm.
buying this before MGM Plus came in, and um, my reps were mad at me because they thought that I killed the deal. Because this company, they really loved the paranormal aspect of it. Okay. And so it was like the second or third meeting, and everything was great, and Eli was being Eli, and everything was awesome, and he's such a good hype man. And then the question was, so what do you think actually happened, Branden? Do you believe in like the right? And I'm just an honest guy. I said, I have no way. I said, no, I don't think that. They go, wait, what? I said, no, because I think the truth is a lot scarier than some demonic ghost story.
Yeah.
Like as a parent,
yeah.
What I take away from this is that everybody who should have given a shit, from coaches to clergy to parents to teachers, they all missed an obvious, severe mental break that this kid had.
You know what I find even scarier than that?
Yeah.
Is that there were, Sister Philomena clearly cared about this child.
Yep. Agreed.
What's so scary is you also just, as a parent, you also just don't know what is a normal amount of a kid just being a kid figuring out their own creative path and what is the problem. And that was something we really explored in this, especially using Eli's background, who was also a kid who drew
went through all this stuff.
And I love that he shared that with us. Like, he was just a kid who was finding his creativity and has continued to live a wonderful life because of that and because it was fostered. And yet here was a kid who was doing that, but it was a cry for help. And how, as a parent, you know the difference.
Yeah.
That to me is what's scary. That is what haunts me.
Brutal. All right. So I have a lot of technical questions for you, just because you were there from the beginning and you were there at the very end when the final episodes were delivered. Okay. Yeah. And I was there for some of it on the email streams and watching the cuts, but to talk a little bit about the editing process, because I know that was a massive mountain to climb.
It was a bit, it always is. It always is. I had such an amazing edit team, and I had such an amazing story producer who was doing everything with me and across all episodes. And I just love our editors. They were, and what my tactic with this was, start by telling everybody what their episode is about. Episode 1 is about setting up what happened that night, plain and simple.
I'm sorry, wait, let me just interject here. So you had all 4 were getting cut at the same time with 4 different editors.
Yes, okay. 4 different edits, 4 different editors for every episode. So episode 1 is about what happened. Episode 2 is about the fallout and the town reacting. Episode 3 is about the point of view that this was the devil. And episode 4 is about, well, what else could it have been? And every editor, I said, go to town. Use that as your style, like as that's what your episode is about. So, you've got your episode 3 editor just having so much fun with the horror. And you've got your episode 2 editor really working with the archive of the time and making us feel what it was like to be in the 80s at the time. And then coming back in and saying, okay, now we have to find things that are going to unify all the episodes so it doesn't feel like 4 separate shows. But I really wanted to give everybody the ability to find their episode's voice first. It's a lot easier to unify it later. A lot harder to find the style of an episode later. So that was our tactic. But man, they just were all so smart and so thoughtful. And we had a lot of fun working on this project. We did a lot of talking, a lot of just sort of talking about the things that interest us, talking about, how to approach these challenges. And at the end of the day, like, we all work really hard, but I want to have a good time with my team. And I want everybody to feel safe bringing their ideas to me, and saying like, I think we should try this. Great. Let me see it. Let me see what that looks like. And that's how we handled it. And it just really was a very fun process.
How many versions of each episode do you see before you get to what we're all about to watch on Sunday night?
Oh my God, that I saw. I mean, I would say at least 20.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
I owe you a big thank you, because I think I only was asked to watch 2 or 3 versions.
Yeah, no. We're like sitting in and making everybody look at cue cards with me, and it would just be better if we move this here. And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, yes, do it. And then they do it, and I'm like, just kidding, that didn't work. Do it again this way, Or sometimes it does work, but it's just like, you just gotta keep trying, and you gotta stop. The timeline is always really hard. Like, we got to get this done by the next 2 weeks. And it's always very scary, but I just try to be like, all right, we'll get there. Let's just try things out. But That's part of the fun. I love doing it. I think it's really, really fun. I love telling
How
stories.
how's MGM Plus been as, because they're a studio and a network. Like how have they been as a partner?
Great. They let us figure things out.
Mhm.
They let us do our work. Jill, our network executive, was very clear about the things that mattered to her and told us, and we worked through that. And she was very, let us try different things. It just was a very good process. And, again, it's collaborative on all accounts. It was collaborative with her, where she was like, I need this more from you guys. Great, let's try it. Cool. Um, and collaborative with all the team members working on it. Collaborative with you, with Eli. It just was it was an all hands on deck, everybody bringing their best self project.
Yeah, well, again, I told everybody from the beginning that you couldn't depend on me for notes, because I'm going to think everything is awesome, because I'm just so
I mean,
just so
I like
jazzed.
getting your cheerleading notes. I was like, cool, he likes it.
Oh, just so jazzed that everything just went the way I mean, even down to, you know, casting my best friend's kid in a small part, because
Yeah.
he's with the age that Tommy was now. I mean, that it gave him so much high school credit, so much cred, so much street cred in high school. Now it's like, yeah, I got a TV show coming. Kid could write his own ticket. Yeah, it's
I mean, he
crazy.
did a great job. We were very, very
Oh,
impressed with him. So
it was amazing. So what's your takeaway from this? Like my big thing is, what is like what interview affected you the most? Like, what did you hear from somebody that either made you go like, God, what am I doing on this show? Or like, wow, I'm so grateful for this show. Like, did something scare you? Did you lose sleep over something? Or like, did you feel inspired? Like, what did you hear that
my
made it worth
favorite interview, hands down, is with Bart McConley, who was the first cop on the scene.
it? Really?
And the thing that I still feel is, again, he was 20 years old, and we never think, there's so much like cops are bad, and we'll get into the politics of that, but like, just as a human being, this was a kid who showed up and saw something awful. And we don't talk about what that does to people. And his interview, like, he had to get up and walk out of the room a few times. It was so hard for him to talk about it. And I am
Wow.
so appreciative that he was willing to share that with us, because it took a lot of, he was incredibly brave to do that.
Yeah.
Incredibly brave. And he's a man, and he grew up in a time when men were not supposed to show feelings. And that's what he talked about. And here he was, visibly shaken by this memory of what happened. And I just found that so brave. And I was so appreciative that he shared that with us, because this is a story about trauma. And this is a story about, all levels of it. And you don't, yeah. I loved it. I think
His
it's,
episode, I mean, his interview is very, very moving, and I second your emotion there about the bravery, and I'm not sure if you're aware that bravery extends to present day, because his high school friends are going to break his balls when they see him crying. Okay, they're going to, and he had to know that. And I'm not joking around about it. Like, he's going to catch hell for this. But it's going to be from people who don't understand the trauma that he went through, or they do, but they're not brave enough to confront it in themselves. So they're gonna mock and ridicule him, probably.
right. But on the other hand, somebody else might watch it and be like, oh my God, I saw
Yeah.
something traumatic too when I was a child, and I never processed it, and it's okay. So,
Yep, exactly.
it's a trade-off.
Exactly. And that's what I think is going to be the takeaway from this, is that hopefully, and I know it's kind of, it's the opposite probably, but what I like to think is that eventually the town won't be that place where Tommy killed his mom. I know that this show is going to put it back in the spotlight because of that, but if it's a step towards kind of being able to shuffle that off as the identity of the town, and like, people get to talk about it, we get to once and for all really talk about it decades later, and then hopefully move on from it,
Yeah.
I've been able to. It's been cathartic for me. This is oh gosh, absolutely. I was talking to Trey about it. Like, within 5 minutes of meeting Trey, we were talking like we'd known each other forever, and talking about how we're dealing with personal trauma through this project. and it's just something that was in my head for so long, and I was able to exercise it. Sorry to use that term, but to exercise it and to get it out. And hopefully it helps some of the people involved too, because there's a lot of trauma there, but not just with Bart, Sister Philomena, Detective Hart's still carrying some shit around,
Thank you so much for talking about, I really appreciate you diving into the sort of the uncovering how it's all made, because it is complicated and we put a lot of thought into it. And
thank you for this, for everything that you do, all of the work you put in. Everyone knows, you're the captain of the ship. You're in a really, really tight ship, and it couldn't have happened without you. And so I'm forever grateful for that. And so listeners, her name is Danielle Franco. If you like the show, you have her to thank. So I hope everyone tunes in on August 31st, MGM Plus. Danielle, much love. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely working with you, and we'll continue.
And you.
The Devil Within is an EVO production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Branden Morgan.